Now that you've taken some time to read through and understand the composition versus inheritance model that is used within React, now is a good time to kind of talk about the child-parent relationship within our application. And this is a good opportunity to really see the difference between an inheritance and a composition model. In a regular inheritance model, you would have several objects that inherit functionality from a parent object and then modify it and adjust it for the needs of the specialized individual. And an example would be in real life, we have the animal kingdom, and it's broken up into various different groups. We may have a group for reptiles and a group for cats or felines. But those two groups are pretty massive, and they have common abilities and common attributes, and that's what makes them categories. But within those categories, we can break it down into different subgroups, which means we could have, big cats and domestic cats, or wild cats and domestic cats. We could have lions, and we could have a regular house cat. And although they have similar attributes and similar abilities, they each have different specialized abilities. So they may inherit abilities and attributes from their parent groups that bring them down, that make them common or make them fit into that parent group. But as individuals, they would have different features and abilities that make them unique in comparison to other cats or felines that have the same abilities. Well, inside of a composition, instead of having parent categories that have functionality and features that we then inherit and create a more specific version of that thing, instead, in React, what we're doing is we're focusing more on the composition of an application, and we're taking functionality, we're breaking it up into components, and then where that functionality might be reusable, we can then pull those components in and have that ability added to a parent component. So instead of it being a parent-child relationship like we are used to in the natural world, such as I have parents, they have blue eyes and brown hair, and I inherited that from my parents. I also inherited the ability to speak English. I inherited the ability to run and walk and talk. Instead of it being that kind of inheritance model, composition means that we are finding the functionality inside of the application. We are identifying that functionality. We are separating it out into components. And then where we need that functionality, we are then going to include that component into a parent component. So now the parent-child relationship is more about the parent component having a broader task, and then its children being brought in to accomplish specific functionality that the parent component itself does not have. And we're going to pull open our screen ink, and we're going to let's draw this out really quick. Should have already had that open, but it wasn't. All right. So let's kind of highlight these really quick. Make sure we got boxes right there. Okay. So we have our parent component right here, which corresponds to our app.js functional component. We have our list component that lists all of our to-dos right here. Then we have our to-do display or to-do item display component. And then we have our to-do create item component. Now with this composition model, we do have parent components, and our parent components right now are the app.js component. And then another parent component would be the to-do list component, because it has the to-do item inside of it, or it has multiple to-do items inside of it. With those being parent components, you can see that we're not really pulling in more specific versions of a list component or more specific versions of an app.js component. Instead, what we're doing is we are pulling in functionality. And the functionality that we are pulling in these instances is the ability to display a single to-do item. And with that ability, we actually use it multiple times. We see that we have multiple to-do item display components that are inside of the to-do list component. So we actually pull that functionality in 4 different times in order to display a to-do item. The app component pulls in this list or to-do item list component because it lacks the ability to list to-dos, and therefore it pulls that component in to take care of listing to-dos for it. At the same time, it also pulls in the functionality, oops, I've got the wrong one selected. It also pulls in the functionality of creating a to-do because it itself does not have that functionality built into it. The cool thing about this is that because we have separated out our user interface and our application's features into functionality, and we created components that are wrapped around and based on that functionality, we can actually pull these components in many different ways to build multiple different user interfaces that have that particular functionality within our application. What I mean by that is, I'm going to switch back to this, is that although we have this to-do list item mockup right here, we can add, let's add another mockup. Can we add another mockup right here? Let's go ahead and add another mockup. Being that our initial mockup looks like this, if I wanted to have a different look and feel for the admin rather than a particular user, but I still wanted the ability to list to-do items, I could create a very specific user or admin mockup. Let's go over here. And why is it not allowing me to edit? Oh, I need to drag it in. Got to learn how to use the software. All right, so maybe my admin user interface is a little different than my user's interface. Instead, I've got this, and then I need this to-do functionality. So maybe I copy that component and I use it inside of my admin interface. But I use it differently, but it still has the functionality of listing to-do items. And then because I'm an admin, maybe I don't create to-do items, but I can manage users. So maybe in my admin interface, I can manage users, which means I can list users and everything. And when I click on a user, maybe I can go ahead and see what to-do items a user has assigned to them. So let's go ahead and put this up here, and we'll just do user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4. And in this example right here, if I were to click on and highlight user number 1, let's go ahead and bold that and underline it. Oh, it won't let me do it. Oh, it did all of them. All right, well, that wasn't very useful. But we'll move on. If I were to click on user 1, it would show me all of user 1's to-do items right here by utilizing that to-do item list component that we had over here in the regular one that's specific to a user. And then I have down here also within it the to-do item display. So the functionality is done through composition, and we have parent components like this admin page. And then inside of it, it would have a user list component with most likely a user display component for each one of those. And then when I click on that, I could have it have that functionality to display all of the to-do items for that particular user, and then list all of those to-do items using the to-do item display. Hopefully this helps you understand the parent-child relationship as well as how composition is used inside of React in order to build different React interfaces or user interfaces, but reuse the functionality no matter where you are inside of the application or no matter what feature set you're implementing. We can always reuse components because instead of inheritance, they are in charge of their own functionality, and we just compose new functionality by using existing functionality. And here, inside of our admin interface, we composed new functionality of a new component that displays users, but we also allowed the to-do list to display the items for that, or the to-do items for that particular user. So we're using that same ability, that same functionality of the to-do item list inside of our regular one to use it inside of our admin. That would be composition over inheritance. And it would also be the child-parent relationship, where this admin page component would pull in the user list component, which would pull in the user display component. Same thing with the to-do. The admin page component would pull in the to-do item list component, and the to-do item list would pull in the to-do item display component. And that is composition.